All right, we're gonna go ahead and let everyone do a little bit of a roll call so we can see who is here and who is watching. If you can just in the chat area, if there's a chat area that shows up for you, go ahead and let us know that you're on the phone or sorry, watching. And then Heidi, if you can kind of let me know who's there since we're working from different places today.
Yes, ma'am.
We'll give people just a minute or two to get on here, and then we'll get started. All right, looks like we have a few people on who can watch but can't see chat. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So today we're talking about safe and effective messaging about suicide. My name is Jess Stohlmann-Rainey, and my colleague Heidi Lightenburger is also on the line here. We're going to talk about first just in general how safe messaging works, and then really specifically how to share your story as a suicide attempt or suicide loss survivor, or even someone who has gone through a mental health crisis. We know that one of the most important things about changing people's hearts and minds about these issues is really hearing from people who they feel like are like them that have been through something. So sharing lived experience is really important, but the way we do it really matters. Just like the way we talk about suicide to the public really matters. So the first kind of step for us is to talk about safe messaging generally and why that matters. So there are kind of two groups of people that safe messaging matters a lot to. The first group is vulnerable people. So this is people who are maybe at risk for suicide. They might already be thinking about suicide. People who have encountered a lot of difficulties, who might be able to relate to people who have died by suicide. And the reason that safe messaging matters for that group is that we know that unsafe messaging increases their risk for suicide attempts and deaths. We also know that safe messaging reduces the shame and fear and connects people to resources. So when people are hearing about suicide in ways that are effective, in ways that are safe, they're more likely to access care. When people are hearing about suicide in ways that are unsafe, we're actually increasing their risk. So what we often hear from schools, workplaces, all of these spaces where people are afraid to talk about, sometimes the news, where people are afraid to talk about suicide, what they're afraid of is increasing risk. And what we know is that if we talk about suicide well, it decreases risk. Not talking about suicide increases risk. And talking about suicide in an unsafe way also increases risk. So we're going to talk about all of the things that you can do to get this right. So then the other group of people that safe messaging matters a lot to is the general public. And we know that unsafe messaging increases stigma and judgment. So the way we talk about suicide, if we talk about it as something that's selfish, if we talk about it as this like epidemic where we don't know what causes it and there's nothing we can do, that increases people's kind of inclination to just throw up their hands and not address the issue. But safe messaging encourages conversations about mental health, about hope and help. And when we're having those kinds of conversations, that's how we really save people's lives. So we're going to go through some do's and don'ts about suicide. Heidi's going to take over. We're going to first start out talking about some of the things we don't want to do. We'll talk about do's and then move into a discussion on how we can share our lived experiences. So I'm going to, Heidi, is that don't slide up for you now?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And I just want to make sure, can everybody who's listening indicate to us in some way if you guys can hear me? We're working from different machines, so I just want to make sure that I'm coming through all right. Matthew, if you're on the line, if you can just comment and let us know if you can hear me. Jess, I'm going to start to go through these unless we hear otherwise.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay, so the first thing to think about when we're talking about safe and effective messaging are the don'ts, because they're big, they're important. And so the first part of that is not to sensationalize suicide. We often hear about suicide in these really outrageous, sort of extreme ways. So it sends the message that it's happening infrequently enough that it doesn't warrant attention, but it's also so frequent that it's so massive we can't do anything about it. So to sensationalize suicide would be to report about it in a really ineffective and dangerous way. We also don't want to include videos or photos of the scene, method, or funeral. It can be really, really triggering for people. It's also that sort of shock factor. Promote in and of itself sort of unsafe messaging. That sort of graphic display of suicide is really harmful, really ineffective, and it invades people's private sort of loss as well. We don't want to say that it's inexplicable or singularly caused, because suicide is caused by multiple factors. We know that because of the research that's been conducted in the field. And also to blame it on a single cause would be to really sort of simplify a complicated situation. For instance, we've heard the term bully-cide. I'm sure many of us have. What that does is send a message to bully youth that the only way to escape a bullying situation is to die by suicide. And that's not the message that we want to send. We want to send messages of hope and help and healing. So for instance, we wouldn't want to say bullying causes suicide. We know the many factors that lead to suicide, and we know that suicide is complicated. Instead, we want to say something like bullying is a red flag for depression. Depression can be a cause of suicide. It can lead to suicide. Just move to change the slide or chime in?
I want to just say a couple more things about this bullying issue. I've seen a lot about it sort of in response to the election, and I think we need to be really, really careful about this. So there are some specific facts that get ignored all the time around bullying and suicide. The first one is that both bullied youth and the youth who are bullied are at higher risk. So youth who are bullied are actually at higher risk than youth who are bullies, who are engaging in bullying behavior, are actually at higher risk than youth who are bullied. So when we talk about bullying being a cause of suicide, it's not very accurate. Most youth who are bullied or who are bullies never consider suicide, ever. It doesn't even cross their minds. So really, bullying is just one factor in this kind of perfect storm of events that can make someone think about suicide. So when we overemphasize a singular cause, we're doing something wrong. We are making an overly simplified connection that can make vulnerable people think that suicide is the only solution for them. All right, I did the slide update for you, Heidi.
Yes, it updated finally. There's a little bit of a drag, which is why I sort of messed up that last slide. Anyway, okay, sorry guys. Okay, so some other things to consider when reporting about suicide. We often hear really romantic stories about suicide, and that happens starting in middle school when we get told to read Romeo and Juliet. Suicide isn't romantic, and to send the message that it is a romantic endeavor is really, really dangerous to young people. It's really, really dangerous to people in general. Suicide has really terrible, tragic, effects on communities and families, and people don't have to die, and suicide is preventable. And so to romanticize it, to chalk it up to something beautiful that two people can do to, create some sort of everlasting bond is really dangerous and just really untrue. We don't want to overemphasize the problem without a call to action. We do see, people doing really compassionate suicide prevention awareness work, and oftentimes that comes without sort of a call to action. So people are just made aware of these factors, these statistics, and they're not given any action as far as what to do next. If we're lucky, we'll see marketing material with actual, hotline numbers, or here's what to do if you're worried about someone. Here's who to call. If you want more information about this is how you can get involved. Good marketing campaigns, good reporting in general have a call to action, a really tangible call to action. So we don't want to be vague about that call to action. The more simplified that is, the better, the more it will resonate with people. 3 specific things. People are really great at remembering tasks that come in threes. Even just one task is great, but 1, 2, 3, a hotline, a website, and something else can help make the call to action really clear. We also don't want to give detailed descriptions of the meme. It's really shocking. I'm sure it's really great for clickbait and things like that. But for instance, when Robin Williams died, the USA Today put out an article with basically a step-by-step report of how Robin Williams died. And so all that did was, for vulnerable populations, was provide them a step-by-step how-to guide for how to die by suicide. It doesn't help anybody. It's just really unnecessary, and when it's reported on that way, it's really harmful as well. So the next set of tools are the things that we can do when we're reporting on suicide. These are things that are really great that people should remember to do whenever they're talking about something involving a sort of public health approach to messaging or anything like that. So the do's. we want to emphasize help seeking and include resources. So we want people to feel like they can seek out the help that they need to feel well, and to give them resources to do that. That's a two-step process, right? We also want to emphasize prevention, because we know that prevention works. We know that suicides can be preventable, or can be prevented, I'm sorry. So we want to emphasize that not only is seeking treatment the right way to go, but also that it will work, it will help, it will make things better, that you don't have to die by suicide. The suicide doesn't have to be an option. We want to be able to list warning signs so that people know what to look for, and know when their friends and family, or anybody that they interact with can look out, can know what to look for to keep people safe. And then we want to highlight treatments that work. We want to highlight treatments that are effective, like seeking out a therapist, things like that. Talking to crisis counselors, walking into crisis centers. We want people to know that these things exist and that they're helpful. Some other things to consider: definitely tailoring our message to specific audiences. I know it's tempting to pick something and just let it ride with every audience that we speak with, but unfortunately, we have to tailor our message so that people can understand us. Otherwise, some things will be lost on folks, and especially for a message like suicide being preventable, we want to make sure that everybody hears that and meet people where they're at, and tailoring our message to that specific audience. We want to know what we want people to do that will help save lives. When we're informed about that, we can definitely communicate that to other people. We want to share positive findings and use positive emotional appeal. So science and stories about hope and recovery. Statistics don't work. Statistics don't change minds and hearts, but stories of recovery do. And coupled with science, that's the research that can back it up, lived experience can be really, really, really powerful as a tool. Some other things we want to emphasize are help seeking and help giving. Sorry, my slide took a second to update. We want to normalize help seeking and help giving, right? That means that it's important for us to talk about that we're getting our own help, and talk about when we reach out to other folks. Hearing people do that helps normalize that, so people feel comfortable reaching out when they're worried about someone, and they feel comfortable accessing the care that they need when they need it. Again, we want to limit statistics. They just don't resonate with people. They're really easy to plug in, but without the lived experience, without the things that move our hearts and emotions, it just doesn't resonate the right way. And then we want to connect with other suicide prevention groups that are sending strong messages and doing effective work. We want to learn from them. We want to work with them. We have a common goal. There's no reason why we shouldn't be working with each other. We want to pre-test and evaluate our message. So we want to make sure that our campaign makes sense to our audience, that it's resonating with our audience, and we're connecting with the right people, and then it's creating the desired effect that we want. So just talking about the issue is not enough. We want people to be going a step further. We want people to be reaching out for help, reaching out and helping others. Yep, that's Jess, my screen is frozen.
Your screen's frozen?
My screen's frozen.
Okay, well.
Sorry, guys.
It should move in a second, I hope.
Oh, there it is. Test your knowledge.
Yep.
Okay, so go for it.
So we're going to go through, Heidi's going to go through a couple of different campaigns that have been done by other people, and we'll talk about what is safe or unsafe about them.
Okay, so I'm sorry. Okay, so what we have going on in this photo, we have a bunch of what looks like video windows. So each photo is it's a video of folks talking about how they got help. We have the text at the top that shows us that. So this looks like testimonials of people who are getting help, and then at the bottom there are resources. I would say that this is safe messaging. It offers personal lived experience about reaching out for help when they needed it. It normalizes help-seeking behavior, and it offers resources. I would say yes to this campaign. This is probably safe and effective.
Cool. Did the safe thing show up for you?
The safe thing showed up for me.
Perfect. All right, we're transitioning to the next one then. Sorry about the lag time, everyone.
Okay, so in this photo, it looks like they're college students and some greenery behind them with a bunch of chairs. So I would venture to guess that this is on a college campus. It looks like there's some signage. Probably, I cannot read what that says.
Here, I'll read the sign. I'll read the sign for you. So the sign says that each chair represents a person who died by suicide this year.
Okay, so based on that, it doesn't seem like there's a call to action. There aren't any resources. So I would say that this is probably unsafe messaging, and I would want to work with this team to see what alterations they can make for the next time.
This is the kind of thing we see on college campuses pretty much all the time. College campuses often want to do some kind of big awareness campaign that just says, oh my gosh, there's so much suicide death. And then there's no call to action, no resources, and it just makes people afraid, and it makes people feel hopeless. And if hope is the antidote to suicide, we don't want our messaging about suicide to make people feel hopeless, which leads really well into this next one. Has that slide showed up for you?
Yes, it has.
Okay, there you go.
So what we have in this photo is, it looks like a bunch of clothing, and it spells out hope. Jess, can you read that?
Yep.
I cannot.
Yeah. It says each year 1,800 college students commit suicide.
So there's a statistic, and it's pretty shocking, and I don't see a call to action or a resource. So, I see hope, and so that's really nice, but that sort of doesn't leave me with anything else. I would say this is probably unsafe messaging. Yeah.
So this is another kind of thing that we see. Most of these things happen on college campuses. So there's some kind of standing exhibit, and people are walking past it, and what they see is like, all these people died by suicide, and then the message underneath it says hope, but there's nothing that actually gives people hope. There's just a message that says hope. So it's kind of moving in the right direction, but isn't quite capturing what we would look for.
Jeff, can you do this next one? Because
yep.
Sorry.
You can't read it? All right. Okay, I'll take these over. So there are two different kind of blocks. So this is a Facebook post and then a Twitter post. One is from the WPI Student Development and Counseling Center. So this is a college campus reposting something from the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. The first post says there are a million reasons to call the Lifeline. Find out why Allison would call, and then you can play Allison's video about why she called the hotline, the Lifeline. The bottom one is from the Jed Foundation, and they say sometimes doing something positive helps us cope with tragedy. Send Boston a love is louder message to support of support and healing. So both of these are safe messaging. And the first one, what we see them doing is providing a resource, the Lifeline, talking about why someone should call that, so promoting help-seeking behavior and normalizing it by sharing someone's lived experience. And the second one, what you can see happening is that they are talking about a direct call to action that people can do to help others cope with tragedy. And helping people cope with tragedy prevents suicide. So they ask you to send a love is louder message. So what we're going to want to remember about safe messaging is to focus on solutions, be positive, always use our safe and effective messaging, tell people what to do, and then stay focused and make sure that we're communicating the same message consistently a number of times. I'm going to move on to sharing your lived experience. And see, we're getting kind of close on our time here. So the first thing for sharing your lived experience, the first kind of question you want to ask yourself is whether or not you're ready. You should only tell your story if you want to. Not everyone with lived experience does want to. They don't all need to. You have to make sure you've given yourself enough time to heal and make meaning out of your experiences. And then be really careful that sharing your lived experience is not just about healing yourself, that it's about helping other people. I think it's really important to consider seeking some help from a trusted and knowledgeable mentor or peer before making the decision. Some people recommend that that person be a counselor. I do not think it's necessary to consult with a counselor. Counseling or therapy is not the only way that people recover after a suicide loss or a suicide attempt. So I wouldn't want to narrow the scope that much, and I wouldn't want to tell people exactly how much time has to have passed. But you do want to make sure that you feel like you're in a safe enough place to do that, that you're doing it for the right reasons, and that they're yours, and that it's to further the cause and not about your own healing or some of your own benefit. The second question we need to ask ourselves is whether or not we're prepared for our family and friends' reactions. Not all of our loved ones are going to be accepting. I am really fortunate that most of my loved ones are pretty accepting. Heidi has had a different experience with some of her loved ones, family and friends, but she's also had good experiences as well. So you just want to think about what the reactions might be. You make the decision on your own. It's really about you. You can choose if you want to speak to people about their feelings, but this is really your story. So you get to decide how and when you share it and at what level and how comfortable you are and how much you're going to share it with your friends and family. But I always think it's important to just think through how those people might react. The second layer outside of your friends and family and that close-knit circle is to think about the public. You want to think about long-term ramifications like the loss of privacy or related to your personal or business life. The way I kind of talk about this with people is if you're going to share your story in a public setting, you have to be prepared for someone you meet on Tinder to like Google you and find out you're a suicide attempt survivor, or that your dad killed himself, or that your son killed himself before you go on a date with them. Or you have to be prepared for a potential employer to find out that information and then make judgments about you based on it. And we don't get to control their reaction. We can control what we say, how our story is told, but we can't control the public's reaction. So you always have a choice about how public you make your story. But really, because we're in the internet age, stories are public. That's just kind of how they are. So I would make sure that we are really comfortable before we start sharing these stories. I can remember very, very clearly kind of the first time I disclosed, and it was after I had worked at my organization for over a year before I told people in suicide prevention that I was a suicide attempt survivor, because I had heard multiple times in my life that being a suicide attempt survivor made me someone who was unqualified to do that work because I was vulnerable or maybe unstable. And that was within the field, not at my organization, but I had heard it within the field before. So you really want to be thoughtful about making the decision to become public about your story. And there are huge benefits to doing that. Once you decide you do want to share your story, you'll want to make sure you've done your research. that you know how to use safe and effective messaging. It's really worth collaborating with a local or a national suicide prevention organization to help make sure that you're doing your presentation in an effective way. You can absolutely contact Heidi or I about that. We would be happy to help you with that. And always make sure that you have some resources that you're guiding people to at the end of your talk. When I present about my lived experience, I maybe talk for about 5 minutes at the very, very most about my actual experience. The majority of everything else I do is actually just educating people about suicide, and my story is like the case study or the example. So, it doesn't need to be an hour-long presentation about how you had a suicide crisis or what it felt like to lose someone. It can really just be this piece of a presentation or a piece of someone else's presentation that allows them to talk about the science and to talk about the facts that we know in a way that's effective. So if you think back to just a few minutes ago when we were talking about safe and effective messaging, this is the heart piece that moves people, that brings people to you, is to be able to tell this story. And then the mind piece comes in once we've got people's hearts. If you are going to share your story, it's really important to have a self-care plan. You'll want to make sure you have a support system in place and that they're going to know that you're doing a presentation, and immediately following, they're ready to engage with you. That could include a mental health professional, family member, friend, clergy, colleague, anyone who's a fellow presenter. You might encounter loved ones who are angry or blame other people. Other people might want to share about their own loved one's story. And you want to be prepared that after you present, you're going to be bombarded with people who have their own lived experience they want to share. And so you have to be able to set those limits. It is very overwhelming the first time you share your story in public, the number of people who want to come up afterwards. The majority of them just say thank you and you're so brave. And then the second kind of group of people you get are people who have never had an opportunity to talk about this before, and so they feel compelled to do that. So you need to really find ways to helpfully and appropriately move those people to resources, because you can't be the only person that all of those people talk to. So you'll want to make sure you have those limits set yourself. And then following your presentation, you're going to want to make sure you schedule time to take care of yourself. Take a break from talking about mental health and suicide. I would say this is the thing I'm the worst at when I share my lived experience, because it's my job. I spend a lot of my advocacy and volunteer work in this space. I forget the toll that it can take to share your experience with people. So really making sure that you maintain some balance, which I'm talking about as I left my suicide prevention job and came straight home and I'm doing this presentation. So this is hard. Maintain a balance about your own personal life and really being able to create space so that you can continue doing this in the future. Some of the best resources that we know of are on the next slide, and we will put them, the PDF of this up in the Facebook group for everyone. But really, the Lifeline is wonderful. Trevor Project is great for LGBT youth. Now Matters Now gives people skills for suicide attempt survivors or people struggling with suicide ideation and by people who have struggled. The Crisis Text Line does crisis text support, and they're a wonderful organization. The Trans Lifeline is great because they will not call emergency services to trans people's aid unless they are okay with it, because we know that there are some issues between the trans community and emergency service providers. And then Live Through This is a website where people can go to see others' experiences in story format. So there are photos and stories. So that is all we have for safe and effective messaging. This was a quick one. I want to leave some time for questions and comments. So Heidi, if you see any questions or comments come up, if you can let me know. Otherwise, we will shut it down in a couple of minutes here. right, looks like we have no questions. You can get hold of us at the email that's listed there, compassionateresistance@gmail.com. We'd be happy to chat with you about any of this. We'll add the information about how to watch afterwards and a PDF of the slides probably tomorrow. Thanks for participating, and we appreciate all of you for investing some time in this topic. All right, have a good night, everyone.